Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of Quranology Notes, a program on Quranology Institute's YouTube channel. Today's program will be on the Peking chapters in Quran. And when I say Peking, I'm not referring to the former capital of China, but rather Peking with an A, as in the peak of something. So, what are Peking chapters in Quran? Well, as you may well know, the purpose of Quranology Institute is to produce the existential reading. And one aspect of the existential reading is the structure of Quran. How Quran is arranged is, for us, in our understanding, it is to deliver the maximum impact of the message. And one of the features of Quran structure are these Peking chapters in Quran. Now, so far I have only discovered, I think, four incidents of Peking chapters. Chapter 2, which is peaked by chapter 3. Chapter 4, which is peaked by chapter 5. Chapter 65, At-Talaq, which is peaked by chapter 66, At-Tahrim. Chapter 73, Al-Muzammil, is peaked by chapter 74, Al-Mudaththir. These are all I've discovered so far. And I'm reluctant to actually push for more, simply because if it's a forced research, it's not really very objective. You know, I prefer it to be unbiased, something which I discover rather than I look for, if you know what I mean. So, what are these Peking chapters? Well, let's start with the example of chapter 2, Al-Baqarah. Now, Al-Baqarah is the longest chapter in Quran, and if you ask me, and I think a few traditionalists, mufassirun or exegetes have said this before, that Al-Baqarah by itself is an abbreviated Quran, meaning in those 286 verses, you can find the brief message of Quran, which is 6,236 verses. So, Baqarah is broken into 18 sections. So it's telling you how to establish the garden on earth and live like Adam. Adam is the opening personality of Baqarah. So, if Baqarah already does that, how does chapter 3, the Peking chapter of Baqarah, or Ali Imran, how does that fulfill Baqarah's project? Well, Ali Imran focuses on Isa, and Isa, his attainment of messengership or prophethood is seen as the accelerated version of what goes on in Baqarah. Because if you remember, if you look at chapter 23, I'm jumping a bit now, chapter 23 verse 50, it says that Isa was given a rabwa, or a high place, almost like a garden, if you like. You see, so Isa achieves that. And chapter 3, if you read chapter 3, it will complement chapter 2 in terms of giving it an accelerated project. And what about chapter 4? Chapter 4 gives you the policies, the strategies of administrating a system. It tells you what the system needs in order for the system to achieve an evolutionary state. So what does chapter 5 do? Chapter 5 gives you a peaking of that, an accelerated version of that. And it does so by explaining what is called Dini Kamil, which is the perfect deen. That's in chapter 5 verse 3 itself. Allah says, Al-Yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. So that's already there. Dini Kamil is already there. So, as you can see, chapter 2 and chapter 4, they provide you the fundamental outlines of the system. One tells you a theory. Chapter 2 tells you the theory of the system, what the system needs, and how the system can survive. Chapter 4 tells you about the policies of the system, how people are within the system. Then you have these two chapters, chapter 3 and chapter 5, which give you the accelerated version. And you shouldn't be surprised at these accelerated versions, simply because Quran is not a book which tells you it's either this way or no way at all. No, rather it gives you a sliding scale of methods by which you can achieve the objective, which is Jannah fil Ard, the garden on earth. So what are the commonalities between chapter 2 and chapter 4? Chapter 2 and chapter 4, as I said, they provide the basic outline. They both focus on the calls to humankind. Ya ayyuhan nas. Chapter 2 has 2 of those. Chapter 4 has, I think, about 3 or 4 of those. And those tell you where you start. Where you start is as mankind, and then you move on to those who believe. You become one of those who believe. So chapter 2 and chapter 4 does that. And here's where it gets interesting. What about chapter 3 and chapter 5, the peaking chapters? Well, both these chapters focus on 2 things which I see are quite obvious for this hypothesis, and that is Isa. Chapter 3 discusses Isa in 30 verses, from verse 35 to verse 64. It discusses Isa. And Al-Ma'idah discusses Isa in 3 places. In the beginning, in ayah 40-ish, and towards the end. Actually, no, 4 places. If you look at verses 72 to 73, there's Isa there as well. So yeah, Isa is peppered all along Al-Ma'idah. So Al-Ma'idah and Ali Imran give you an accelerated version personified by Isa. Isa is a very special personality in Quran. He really is. He explains to you about messengership and what the system of the messenger is. And when Isa departs from his people become Nasara, helpers. But they become focused on Isa rather than on Allah. And this is where the problem starts. See? So Allah is explaining to us the peaks of these chapters, how we can see an accelerated version of the projects which Quran has set forth for humankind. So with that, I close this video, and I hope you can read these 4 chapters and come to your own conclusions, and maybe leave some comments. Thank you very much for viewing, and I'll see you next time, inshallah.